On this inside line, I'm going to show you how to split the fender flares on the 2020 and newer Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. This will also cover the Mojave, and if you have painted fender flares, basically any flare that has two pieces, this is how you take them apart. Now, one of my favorite features about the Rubicon Gladiator is the fact that it comes from the factory with a set of Highline flares. These are going to give you an extra 2 inches of clearance above all other Gladiator models, with the Mojave being the only exception. Now, having a little bit of extra room in the fender has allowed me to run a 37 by 1250 Nitto trail grappler with a pretty minimal amount of lift. I've actually tested it in stock form with 1-inch lift, and now I'm running a 3-inch JKS manufacturing suspension kit. I'm very happy with this setup overall. However, I'm going to be running an even larger tire here in the upcoming future, and I don't want to change my suspension kit right now. I sort of like how low it is. The control arms aren't at an extreme angle, so the next option is to try to figure out how to make more room for the tire, and an easy way to do that is to actually split apart the Rubicon flare. Now, the Rubicon flare, just like the Mojave, and if you opt for a painted flare, can all be split. It's a two-piece design, meaning you can actually separate the bottom half of the flare from the top half. Now, I'm going to walk you through what it takes to sort of break these flares apart, and it's a little bit of work, it's a little bit time consuming, but it's a fairly easy job. Now, out back, we're going to start there because it's a little simpler. There's no lights to tend with or anything else, and then up front we'll dive into what I had to do to not only keep the sort of look of the Gladiator, but to add some functionality with replacing my turn signal. To remove the inner fender liner and start the fender split process, you'll need to remove the plastic rivets that run along the outer lip of the lower flare. Since I won't be reusing them, I found drilling them out a quick and easy way to separate the rivets. Next, you'll need to unbolt the 3 8mm bolts that attach the inner fender liner to the bedside. Once that is done, you can use a trim tool to remove the few push-in clips that are supporting the remainder of the liner. After everything is out, you can move on to pulling the flare from the Jeep. Attaching the rear flare to the Gladiator are a series of small plastic clips that you will need to reuse. Take a small pair of needle-nosed pliers and remove each one from the body one at a time. Now, you're going to do this from the back side of the sheet metal itself, noting that the ones towards the door side of the Jeep are a bit tougher to get to. So, do not make the same mistake I did. Go ahead and do the ones nearest the door first. That way, whenever the fender's ready to release, you can have one hand holding that and you can easily remove it from the vehicle. Now, at this point, I set up a small work area with a soft surface for me to work on. I found a moving blanket more than sufficient. The goal here is to limit scratching the flare unnecessarily. Now, to split the flare and actually get it to two pieces, you'll need to drill out a few more plastic rivets that attach to the fender braces at the bottom of each side of the flare. Once that is complete, you can start pulling the flare apart by peeling back the lower half from the upper half by hand. This takes a good bit of force to get started, but once you get it going, it will come apart quickly. Now, your final step here is maybe the most important. You'll need to remove the small plastic strips that stick down below the flare line. A small utility knife with a fresh blade works great for this. Take your time. These cuts need to be done as close to the lip of the flare as possible to give you the cleanest appearance and finish. After you've completed that job, all you'll need to do is clean the sheet metal where the flare attaches and simply line up the OE mounting clips with the holes that are already existing. Simply press in till you hear the clips click in, and then you're done. Removing the front fenders is very similar to out back. You'll drill out the plastic front rivets, but you will need a 10mm to unbolt a few bits of hardware that support the inner liner. Once you have those out, you'll just need a trim tool to pop out a few remaining push-in clips. Just as is the case in the back, I used a small pair of needle nose pliers to remove the retaining clips from the body. Before doing so, be sure to unplug the turn signal harness, which is located near the firewall side of the fender well arch. Now with the fender pulled off, your next step will be to remove the lower fender brace and then remove the factory wiring harness by using a trim tool to pop out the harness bundle. Now you can unbolt the light assembly and bracket. It does have a bit of adhesive at the top of the light, so even with it unbolted, you will need to put a little force to peel it away from the flare. Once you have this completed, you can start by pulling the two fender halves apart. Again, I prefer to start at the bottom and just slowly pull it apart, using more force on that lower half that you're not going to be reusing. Once that is done, just like out back, you'll need to trim the small fender tabs off with a utility knife. Now you're ready to pop back on the flare. Just clean up the body where the flare meets, and you can simply put it back in place using the OE clips that you removed. Now at this point, I needed a solution for my turn signal. For this, I turned to Rugged Ridge and picked up one of its fender chop brackets. They actually offer this chop bracket kit with either a small LED or what I went with here, which has the optional daytime running light. Now, I prefer this style as it keeps that very distinct Gladiator JL appearance, which I really think is just a good calling card for how these front ends look. Now, this kit includes all of the wiring, detailed instructions, and hardware that you'll need. It's two steel brackets that are going to use existing holes on the Gladiator's body to bolt in place. Now, to help give the fender a little bit more strength, there is some 3M double-sided tape that's going to stick to the front side of the fender. Now, depending on if your Gladiator came from the factory with the LED lighting group, will determine which pre-wired pin you will insert into the harness. Now, I have the Taser from Z Automotive, so I simply told the computer that I have LED turn signals now and didn't have an issue. Overall, I am very happy with the fit and finish of the light setup. I find them to be extremely bright and very usable, and for my needs of wanting to run a larger tire, they stick way out of the way, so I'm not concerned that even moving up to something like a 40, I'm going to be interfering with them. So 2 thumbs up here for the, I think it was about $300 for the kit, which is pretty much on par. I think it's a good value, especially considering it's all bolt-on and plug and play. As you can see now, I have a ton more room for these 37s to roam. Not even worried about them rubbing, not even in the least. Few of the negatives here, there's definitely more engine compartment exposed. That's good for heat, bad for stuff slinging inside of your engine compartment. Out back, you have things like the fuel filler necks exposed, so I'll probably end up upgrading to some sort of inner fender just to keep that thing a little bit cleaner. You know, it'll help with debris, but for right now, just leaving it as it is. Overall, I actually really like this look. I thought it was going to make the tires look kind of small, but I think the Jeep looks really nice overall with the setup. Got some more upgrades obviously coming. If you guys found this video helpful and informative, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know if you got any questions. If you got any questions directly for me, you can always find me on Instagram at Ali Mansour Editor. And until then, hope to see you guys on the trail soon. All right, let's get back to wheeling. See ya.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.